Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Legal Score. I am your host, Sonia. Today's episode will be solely audio. My apologies for the inconvenience. I'm actually dealing with an allergic reaction, have been for the majority of this week. And so today's episode would be clearly audio, but I am live. Today is May 30th, 2026. It's a beautiful Saturday in my neck of the woods, and I hope it is for yours as well. And I want to dedicate today's show to my grandfather. Today would have been his birthday, so happy heavenly birthday to him. And also dedicating all of our shows for the month of May to our great producer in the sky, John Mac McGrath. It's been Military Appreciation Month, Mental Health Awareness Month, and we just greatly appreciate all the support from everybody over all of the last several years we've been doing this thing. So come in and say hello. I will still see and address your comment. And just hoping that everyone's doing great today. We got a lot of news to cover today. Now, Saturday segment is a little mixture of a little sports, but mostly news headlines, legal things, and that sort. Disclaimer, I am not an attorney. And so nothing that I say today is to be construed as soliciting or receiving or giving legal advice. It is strictly my opinion. And so, with that, we'll go ahead and get started on today. Shout out. Let me go ahead and put my sports shout out there right away. Excuse me. Shout out to the Carolina Hurricanes. Yes, yes, yes. My home team. We are headed to the Stanley Cup final for the first time in 2 decades after a dominant 6-1 victory over the Montreal Canadiens last night. We have clinched the Eastern Conference Finals 4-1 and the best of seven series. My Hurricanes put on a defensive clinic, stifling Montreal to just 5 goals over the final 4 games of the series. Logan Stankoven and Taylor Hall ignited the offense with 3 points apiece, while goaltender Frederick Anderson put up a rock solid 23 save performance. Big kudos to him, and it was an absolute emotional win because Anderson dedicated his victory to his late agent, Claude Lemo, who passed away on Thursday. So, just a very emotional week for the Canes and specifically for Anderson, specifically calling this a deeply meaningful moment for the entire locker room. So, condolences to the Lemo family and to Anderson himself. Definitely Frederick Anderson, the goaltender there, who really had an outstanding performance to lead the Canes to the victory. The Hurricanes are entering the finals, boasting a stellar 12-1 postseason record. I mean, almost flawless, you guys. We're opening at game one of the Stanley Cup final as the odds maker favorites on home ice in Raleigh on Tuesday, coming up June 2nd. And we will be squaring off against the Vegas Golden Knights for the Stanley Cup. So, congratulations to the Carolina Hurricanes. It's time for me to go get some gear. I always support all of the Carolina teams except Tar Heel. You guys know how I am with that. But to know that these guys, 2 decades is a very long time. We saw a lot of support from the Carolina Panthers franchise was out there. Luke Kuechly, Xavier Legette, to name a couple that were actually at the game. And so the Canes are just, as they say, getting it done. And I'm just excited. I want to go ahead and make sure I secure the gear before it becomes extremely expensive because y'all know it like I know the bandwagoners will be coming out sooner than later. And so with that being said, we want to make sure that we get a chance to get those things in order before they get super expensive. Now, if you are a Canes fan, make sure you come on, say hello, drop in your comments who you got. Even if you don't have a team in it, if you're a hockey lover, who do you think takes this one between literally the East and the West? Carolina coming out as a sneaky good team here, and the odds maker, like I said, a little bit ahead of time. But I'm super excited about what the Canes are bringing to the table. I'm excited for the energy. It's extremely sad, though, that Frederick Anderson lost his agent just literally the day before this huge game that Frederick was able to play in and secure this huge victory. And so I like to think about things like that as if they have the best seat in the audience because they're watching from the sky. So definitely wishing the Canes the best. June 2nd will be here literally before you know it. And so we'll be keeping an eye. We'll be keeping you updated. And make sure you guys check us out here on the network. We got all types of shows here. We got movie review shows. We got sports shows. And like today's show that I'm about to do here now, it's going to be now that I've given my Canes the shout out. I'm going to be talking about some legal news here. So it's a little mixture here, guys. It's a little mixture here. Let's start off right now with this trial that I'm following out of South Carolina. This is something that just came across my screen a couple of days ago as I was watching on YouTube. And I've purposely not gone into the third day of trial, which was yesterday, May 29th, because I wanted to actually watch the 27th and the 28th recap of this trial. And this is the state of South Carolina versus Rick Chow. Now, if you don't have an option, or excuse me, should I say an opportunity of knowing what this is about, let's look at things, from the perspective of legal battles that are unfolding right now. 61-year-old Rick Chow, charged with the fatal shooting of 14-year-old Cyrus Carmack Belton back in May of 2023. Ironically, this trial actually began right before the 3-year anniversary, and it is still ongoing outside of a Shell gas station on Park Lane Road in Columbia. So if you aren't familiar with how this case started, the details are absolutely heartbreaking. The prosecutor's core argument is that Child's wife suspected a teenager of stealing 4 bottles of water from a cooler. I watched the surveillance. It was presented in court, and the surveillance footage inside the store later confirmed that Cyrus actually put the water bottles back. There were 4 of them. He counted them out, and then he put all 4 of them back in, and he didn't steal a single thing. In fact, y'all, he left a backpack that he was carrying at the door, and he was only wearing his red hoodie with a Chucky image on the front and some shorts underneath, some pants that he had on. So there was nowhere for him to store these water bottles. But a verbal confrontation erupted, and Rick Chow, who was in the back at the time that this occurred, alongside his son Andy, chased this 14-year-old boy roughly the length of 130 yards. So to give some perspective, that is a little over a football field. So it's almost goalpost to goalpost in an NFL stadium. They chased him out of the store and down the street away from the store, where Rick Chow allegedly fired a single fatal shot into Cyrus's back. And we got to look at that in layers, honestly, y'all. You got to think about it. What happened when the trial finally got underway on day 1? The prosecution didn't hold back any opening statements. Their prosecutor, Byron Gibson, just outstanding job. He looked directly at the jury. In fact, I didn't even see him with any notes. And he literally asked a very gut-wrenching question. What is the value of a human life? He argued passionately to the courtroom that to grieving parents, a child's life is priceless. But on that afternoon, in fact, it was May 28th, 2023, Rick Chow decided that Cyrus Carmack Belton's life was worth less than 4 bottles of water. So I just want you to think about that for a moment. If you're not following this case, it is on YouTube on Law and Crime. And if you're from the Columbia area, the South Carolina area, I'm sure you unfortunately remember this. That young man, I looked at him and he looked as if he could be my son. I was truly heartbroken to see some of the surveillance that he just came into this store, to on a almost warm day to purchase or not purchase this water, and to just do this. And so to think about what that looks like. Hi, Stephanie Godschild. How are you? What's up from the Real Life Topics podcast? Thank you so much for saying hello. I will subscribe if you have a channel here on YouTube. And please do the same. Thank you so much for supporting, and please share my live. Um, but if you think about it, they made it seem as if him stealing, this is just my opinion, that even if he had stolen this water, that it was worth him being executed. It was worth him being chased out of the store several yards from the store. I mean, the advantage point of some of the film and the surveillance and the offsite photographs and things of that matter, you could not even see the store in the backdrop anywhere. This young man literally was running for his life. And it's so horrific to think that kids are going to be kids. You know, we all were kids at some point. We all may have grabbed something or thought that somebody was thinking we were going to grab something and we hadn't paid for it, or we hadn't got to the register. Or I've personally experienced being in a store as a kid, you know, and being monitored as they call her Mrs. Child was doing. But this was a little much. I mean, they went through in the testimony the surveillance that the Childs had in their store. And they said it had to be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars because they did the math and they talked about the terabytes of storage that the Childs had invested in this store. And I get it. You're a business owner, you want to protect your assets, you want to make sure that you are secured for insurance purposes so that if you have to get some type of compensation back, that you are thoroughly documented, that you did your absolute best to be secure in your own business. But this is a 14-year-old child. And no matter what society looks like today to us, we see it. Children just are not the children that we are. And I guess people that are past our generation could say we're not the 30, 40, and 50-year-olds that they once were, because it's just a different time. But 14 is still a child's age. And so, from a matronly perspective, it was heartbreaking to see this child, and was very respectful, even when he was accosted by Andy Child, the son of Rick Child and Mrs. Child, who was working to register, who verbally said to him, "You've got something in your pockets." And this young man says, "I don't have anything in my pockets." He even begins to pat his pockets. He has on a hoodie and he pats the front of his hoodie. "I don't have anything." He wasn't loud. He didn't curse at him. He wasn't disrespectful. He was very even toned. And in that moment, whatever Mrs. Chow said in Cantonese to Andy, Rick runs from the back, the store owner, the husband, runs from the back, armed with a weapon on a clip on his waist, just ready for action. And the young man, Cyrus, exits the store calmly, just a regular calm walk out, and then realizes he's being chased by at least two adults and a third in the back being Mrs. Chow. And then he begins to sprint to the point that he runs out of one of his Nike Air Force Ones. He continues to run, trying to, witnesses said, hold one side of his pants up and pumping the fist of his fist in the air with the other, trying to make speed, to the point that he dropped two cell phones. One cell phone belonging to his mother, and the other was his, but he did not even hasten to get the shoe or the phones. He continued to run. He stumbled, and even though we look at the area right off the road, he probably stumbled on some terrain, because when you look at the way the road was, it was kind of like a little, like the where the road ends. It was no evenness to it. It was just a drop off on the sides. You all know how it is. No sidewalks there. You just, there's the dirt and there's the road. And he stumbled and he gets up and then he proceeds to run again. But in his running, at this point, allegedly, is when Andy, the son, screams out to Mr. Chow, that Cyrus has a gun. And in some accounts was said to have backed up with his hands up, which has not been proven true. But whatever Mrs. Chow said in Cantonese is what instigated this entire thing. Even if he had 4 bottles of water, was it really worth you all to chase him down the street into oncoming traffic? One of the witnesses said that he actually ran out in front of him. He had to stop to keep from hitting at least one of them in their pursuit. There was a mother with her daughter and her granddaughters in the car, and she was distraught even to this day, having witnessed such a horrific ordeal as she was pulling into the gas station. The state called a powerful first witness, and I'm speaking about Lori Carson. She's the grandmother that had her daughter, who did not want to be involved, and her granddaughters in the car with her. They were on their way to see Little Mermaid, or they were coming back from seeing Little Mermaid and they were getting ready to stop for a drink. Just a typical day, late spring day, May 28th, 2023. She testified through tears that she saw Cyrus sprinting down the road with Chow and his son in hot pursuit. She testified that he looked utterly terrified and frantic. She literally even said that he looked like a young child who was in deep trouble and just desperately needed help. And so from her, she literally even said he looks like one of her grandkids or one of her children. That was the mother in her speaking. But this goes a little bit deeper than what most people are seeing. I've seen it already on the surface because I told you all early on about the intricate amount of security that the Childs had in their store. They had over 60 mini camera screens within their surveillance room that almost literally just could pick up everything. I believe it could really pick up an ant on the floor. One of the detectives testified that even in his job with the sheriff's department, the Richland County Sheriff's Department, they don't even have that much of intricate security of surveillance. So they want to talk about Mr. Chow, went to college in Louisiana, that he's a proud American. But I'm hesitating on that. Is he a proud American? Would a proud American, and I hope that when they do the closing arguments, I hope that the prosecutor uses this as part of their closing arguments. Would a proud American literally run down a teenager over a bottle of water to the point of death? Not only did you run him down over some water, but you ran him down, 100 yards. I don't know if I could have run that fast. 100 yards is a lot. And Chow is 61 years old. How quickly did this happen? Well, when you look at some of the surveillance, it had 8:03 p.m. Looking at some of the later surveillance, it was like 8:23 p.m. So this happened in a very short time frame. It was right before dark. As dark was coming up, that's when the crime scene was still being secured, XYZ. But crucially, Carson, going back to her testimony, testified she never saw a weapon. So this is the thing, guys. I forgot to tell y'all this. The Childs are saying, now I told you that Andy said he saw a gun. The Childs claim to defense is that Cyrus came into their store. Their store is armed with security, and it has signs displayed that weapons are forbade on the property of that store. Not only that, in every single state in the continental United States, it is illegal for anyone under the age of 21. In certain states, it's 18 to own a weapon. Cyrus was 14. In my opinion, the defense is trying to use that as if it will negate the fact that this man shot and killed a young man who technically was not even armed. They never saw the weapon inside the store. They never saw the weapon outside of the store. The only claim to fame that they had was at the crime scene, this weapon was recovered. So, my theory is the Childs decided while they're waiting on law enforcement to come up with this story before everybody gets there that cannot corroborate what happened. Oh, I'm going to say he had a gun. Mrs. Child went out there, grabbed Cyrus's shoe and cell phones. And who's to say she didn't put that weapon out there? Now, this weapon was unfortunately in a post that they dug up about Cyrus's social media just 24 hours before this incident. It was the same weapon because it had a specific light on it, and detectives testified that it was likely that that was it. But I'll get to that in a moment. So hold that thought right there. When you look at how Carson even testified that not only did she not see a weapon, but she didn't see anything at all in his hands. He had a backpack, y'all, that they made him leave when he came into the store. He grabbed his backpack and he was out. He dropped the backpack, he dropped everything to the point that some of the detectives said they did not even get the backpack at the same point of gathering all of the other evidence. That's just how scattered everything was. So the jury was also shown this graphic body camera footage from first responding officers detailing a very chaotic scene where bystanders were attempting chest compressions and Chow himself was performing mouth to mouth. Now, the TV audience did not see that because number one, this is still a juvenile. Number two, that is extremely horrific for the TV audience, and Law and Crime did not show that. And I'm glad. This was a detail that the defense was trying to use to claim that there was a lack of legal malice. So in South Carolina, to be convicted of murder, there has to be the element of malice. Without it, you cannot convict. And for those who don't know, in a murder conviction, no matter what state it is, whatever the prosecutor is trying to meet that standard of proof for that murder conviction, whatever that statute is in that specific state regarding murder, the prosecutor has to meet every single element beyond a reasonable doubt. It is the highest standard of proof. And so if they can negate just this one point, which is the malice, they may have a possible win on their side. On day 2 of the trial, the courtroom shifted to this heavy physical and forensic evidence. The state brought in Amanda Metz. She was a seasoned firearms and tool mark examiner with the Richland County Sheriff's Department. The physical evidence at the scene was complicated by the fact that 2 separate firearms were recovered: Child's .45 caliber Glock and a loaded 9mm Taurus pistol that belonged to Cyrus. And not only was it loaded, but there was one in the chamber. They also said that he had a certain type of scope on it that basically, zeroes in on your targets. Now, they also asked if he had any cash in his pockets, if they recovered any of that from his hoodie, and they said no. What I was waiting on was, why did they not say he doesn't need cash? This is not a day and era where everybody carries cash to purchase things. People use tap and pay all the time, and Cyrus did have 2 cell phones. I'm curious as to why that detail was missed, unless they're waiting for later. But it's just really puzzling because that question came up about his inability to pay for these waters. So the fact that he basically came in to steal would basically corroborate their story that he was coming in to rob them, so to speak, since he had this weapon. He was a teenager. He had no money. He took the waters out, then put them back in. No, he probably put them back in because Mrs. Chow was literally just inches behind him. You can see it. She literally is just honed in on him. It's just sad. And I get that stereotyping really does happen. And that's why I mentioned the surveillance. there was a specific part where they talked about him coming into the store, and you see this facial recognition type surveillance as soon as he gets to the door. Not only do you see that, but when you go inside the store, there are several pictures of young African American men that they have printed out these pictures and put on the backdrop of this store. And I've seen it growing up. I still see it as an adult sometimes. You've seen it. People that have stolen from places and they're like, you know what? This person can't come back into the store. We're going to print their picture out. But in this case, there's no history that Cyrus did any of those things. Cyrus did not go in there to do any of those things at all. And there was a point that the defense sat down. The prosecutor had a retired police officer, retired detective on there, African American, 26 years law enforcement experience. And he choked up with talking about how he felt when he saw the surveillance and just how intricate it was and how it just almost seemed as if, and then they stopped short. I know what they were saying, and I do not like that the prosecutor did not complete to allow him to answer the question. The officer should have been allowed to answer that Cyrus was clearly targeted from the time he got on the property. They already had that for him. They did say that the bullet that was retrieved from Cyrus's young body did match the shell casing that came from Rick Child's Glock perfectly. Furthermore, under intense cross-examination, the expert refused to label the teenager's gun an active targeting threat because the defense just kept saying, it's illegal, it's illegal, it's illegal. I mean, don't you think it's illegal that he would come in there with that gun? He's 14. Like, why else would he come in there? And then he took these waters and, they were just basically securing and standing their ground on their own property, making sure that their stuff did not get tainted with because of this kid. But the expert refused to label the teenager's gun any threat, and she also pointed out that a laser attachment does not magically make someone a gifted or lethal shooter. The state's focus is remaining steady that Cyrus was shot from behind while running away, and that is a pivotal point of this trial. Now, I will be right back in about 30 seconds. I'm going to run a commercial real quick. You guys hang tight. I'll be right back. All right, and we are back. Thank you guys so much. Welcome to the second half of the Legal Score. I am your host, Sonja Pearson. This is an audio edition. Thank y'all for joining me today. I explained when I came on, having a little bit of an allergic reaction. So today's show is strictly audio, but this is the last 30 minutes. So make sure you check the recap when you come on. And of course, follow us on all of our socials. We appreciate everybody coming on today. So grateful for each of you and everything that you do. But yeah, so that's the gist of the state versus Rick Child case in South Carolina. I'm sure they have a lot more testimony that's going to be going forth. One of the jurors was replaced because of illness. Another juror is expressing concern because of the length of the trial. Y'all know this literally always happens. Always happens. Like people will basically get on a jury and then they'll be like, "Wait, hold on. How long is this jury trial?" And once they realize it's not a couple days, because let's be clear, y'all, they do not pay jurors. If I remember correctly, they're paying what, $25 a day, and that is not sustainable. So if you think about it, nobody is getting paid. No jobs can fire you or what have you from being in a jury or whatever, being on a jury, I should say. But this is just how it goes. But anyway, I will be following that trial closely. I'm going to be watching day 3 here this afternoon. You guys could all catch it on YouTube. But condolences to Cyrus's family. Seriously, condolences to them. That is a very difficult measure to look at, and to just see that in our day and age that these things are still going on. All right, for the next part of our show, we're going to be talking about a huge, a little bit more positive, but still kind of eerie, but not as morbid as the first story. Galveston, Texas. Now, this is something you all want to check out. This is crazy. Terrifying situation and unfolded in downtown Galveston, Texas on Thursday evening. And it's one that'll make your stomach drop if you have any fear of heights. This is crazy. Imagine being suspended 100 and 100 feet, maybe a little more, 100 feet in the air. I mean, you're talking about the height of like skyscrapers, dangling completely vertical, facing straight up at the sky for nearly 4 hours. Well, that's exactly what happened to 8 students from Houston who were visiting the Pleasure Pier Boardwalk on a school field trip. They were riding the Iron Shark roller coaster, a steel coaster known for its massive 100-foot vertical lift and a terrifying beyond vertical drop over the waters of the Gulf of Mexico. And around 5:30 p.m., right as the car was making its initial vertical ascent toward the absolute highest peak of the ride, the coaster suffered a sudden mechanical malfunction, and because of the safety designs, the emergency brakes locked instantly to keep the car from plunging backwards, but it left those 8 kids stuck in a nightmare position. They were in the intense Texas sun, baking, feet dangling over 100 feet of empty air. The Galveston Fire Department had to execute a high wire, incredibly methodical rescue operation. I mean, they had to bring in a massive tower truck, extending the rescue ladder to its absolute maximum length of 105 feet to reach these kids. It was a specialized 6-member rescue crew had to climb up, secure each individual student in a safety harness, carefully slide them out of the coaster's locking restraints, because let's be clear, y'all, they can't even unbuckle the seat belts. This is one of those, like, when I tell you just the position alone of their bodies, I would have literally lost my soul multiple times, because you can't pass out, you can't panic, you can't scream, because any of that could cause the ride to jump or could cause you to fall out. Like, the direction of the body, the dynamics of the body, the aerodynamics, the I don't know, y'all, the nothing. They had no balance, no anything. Those kids were stuck. The gravity, the gravitational pull is what I'm getting at. They had no way. And I guess kids, they probably are gonna be posting about it if they haven't already. Hey, that was me, da 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 da. Their parents are really pulling their hair out somewhere. But this process was painstakingly slow. I mean, 20 minutes per student. So you think you've been up there for 4 hours, and okay, here comes the rescue. You're like, me first, okay? Or are you like me first? Because You got to hope that these people are going to make sure they hold on to you. You've already been up here this long. Just make sure you hold on to me. Don't drop me. Don't let me wiggle, every single thing. Um, and 20 minutes per student, meaning that the entire ordeal was over 4 hours before the final rider touched solid ground. So eight kids, 20 minutes apiece, 320 minutes. That's part of it right there. But yeah. So Galveston Fire Chief Mike Varela confirmed that despite being severely shaken up and evaluated for dehydration because they've been in the sun all day, can't drink no water for 4 hours, can't do nothing for 4 hours, and the gravitational pull on their bodies, let's be clear, all 8 students were rescued completely uninjured. The park's chief operating officer, Terry Turney, said that the ride will remain strictly shut down until a comprehensive independent inspection determines the exact cause of the failure. Say what? No. Shut this thing down permanently. But y'all know how these thrill seeker Gen Zs are. They're like, oh, where's the ride that the kids got stuck on? That's the one I want to go on. And I want to make sure that I wear my Meta AI glasses because they allow those now as long as you have a strap on them. So I can go live and make sure everybody sees that I'm, matter of fact, they probably want the exact seat. But anyway, this Galveston incident opens up a much larger, more troubling conversation about theme park safety across the United States. While structural engineers will tell you that an emergency stop means that the ride's safety features worked exactly as designed, that's their quote, these type of mechanical failures happen far more often than the public realizes. A lot of us don't even know, they're not reported like that. And occasionally some of these have had devastating outcomes. For instance, even though it's a little far removed from most of your memories and before my time, for instance, the Willard's Wizard accident at California's Great American Park back in the late 1970s and 1980. Well, the coaster suffered repetitive systemic design flaws in its braking system that caused multiple coaster trains to collide at high speeds. Now, that is insane. Despite 11 distinct documented collisions over a 3-year span, the operating company failed to properly overhaul the ride or notify federal safety commissions. It ultimately resulted in a horrific 1980 crash that claimed the life of a 14-year-old boy and injured 8 others, showing what happens when mechanical oversight takes a backseat to the park's profits. So even when riders don't crash, the sheer psychological terror of being trapped or thrown from modern engineering marvels has caused a lot of states to think about these regulations. They're rethinking them. In 2017, a major malfunction on a swinging pendulum ride called the Fireball, you guys will remember that, at the Ohio State Fair, caused an entire row of seats to snap completely off midair, launching riders into a free fall that did kill 1 person and severely injured 7 others. But if you look back through the annals of amusement park history, the absolute deadliest roller coaster tragedy on the United States soil happened nearly a century ago. Y'all, they had roller coasters a century ago. I mean, let's be clear though, a century, when you start getting older, it's really not as long as you think it is, especially when you're over 40. You're just like, okay, this really only 3 times my age, whatever. June 24th, 1930, at Krug Park in Omaha, Nebraska, crowded train on the massive wooden Big Dipper roller coaster was racing along the tracks when a critical piece of hardware, a foundational bolt, snapped completely in half. The failure caused 4 loaded coaster cars to derail instantly, shattering the wooden framework and plunging 35 feet straight down to the ground below. 4 people were killed instantly on the impact, and 17 others suffered catastrophic, life-altering injuries. This tragedy caused such an immense wave of public horror and anger that the city of Omaha launched an immediate investigation and passed a sweeping permanent legal ban on all roller coasters within the Omaha, Nebraska city limits. So it's a structural ban that they implemented back in 1930, and it is still holding true to this day. And even the Krug Park itself was forced to shut its doors permanently just a decade later due to a total collapse in public trust. Like nobody thinks you're safe at all. Today, oversight is still a massive patchwork. You got to think about the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission does regulate mobile carnival rides, but fixed theme parks are left entirely to state by state laws. So some states have more rigorous um, inspections, daily inspections, and some do not. Some rely entirely on voluntary insurance audits, which is insane to me. But it's definitely a reminder that those thrills that we love, or at least some of y'all love, because I'm not a big coaster fan like that, are a fine line between a fun weekend and a technical nightmare. All right, so I'm gonna wrap up a little bit early today. I do want to talk about a couple of other things. You know, I got to put my politics plug in here, y'all. So yesterday marked a major and highly discussed milestone on the campaign trail for those of you who participate in voting, and you really should with everything going on. May 30th marked exactly 1 year since Donald Trump's historic criminal conviction in the New York hush money trial. As the 2026 midterm election cycles heat up across this country, this anniversary has become a massive polarizing local point for both parties, heavily framing the legal and political debates dominating town halls and campaign ads this weekend. I mean, I literally hate this time of year because you are obliterated and proliferated and beliterated, or whatever words you want to say, with a very high amount of this campaign stuff. Everyone's bashing everyone, and it just gets to be a lot. The ads are just a lot. Um, so you just got to think about what that looks like. Now, I will give some well wishes out to my friends that are watching across the Great Plains and the Midwest. They're on high alert today. A little weather plug for y'all. National Weather Service has issued a series of severe weather watches stretching all the way from the Texas Panhandle up through Kansas and Nebraska. Forecasters are warning of an incredibly volatile atmospheric setup capable of producing massive damaging hail, high velocity winds, and isolated tornadoes. Now, local authorities are urging those residents in the path of those storms, of course, finalize your emergency shelters and stay tuned to your local networks to get the latest update. Now, a little bit more as we're getting ready to wrap here. Now, we always talk about like AI and things like that. And everybody uses it. Even when you don't realize you're using it, you really are using it. If you're talking to Siri or Alexa or anything, like they all are uh AI. They all are, all of the stuff that we have, even some of the self-checkout things you see in Walmart and what have you, all of that's still AI powered. But there is a fascinating shift in Silicon Valley. Market reports this past week indicate that the chaotic experimental era of artificial intelligence rollouts is officially cooling down. People have finally started to kind of dummy it back a little bit. Over the last 2 years, there were a lot of tech giants were scrambling to shove experimental AI tools into every piece of software imaginable. You guys remember Common was even out there. And I remember when he first did a commercial about AI, I was like, what is he talking about? This seems like so robust. But even the NFL uses this. They use it in figuring out their schedule and figuring out the probability of wins and the probability of recovery for injured sports figures in different areas, NFL, NBA, MLB. And so if you're thinking about AI tools are in every piece of software imaginable, that's even in what we're doing right now. As soon as my show wraps up, I'll be prompted to produce some AI generated clips. It's in everything. But now corporate strategy has completely pivoted towards normalization because infrastructure stability tightening consumer data privacy compliance, and optimizing the hardware efficiency. It's basically settling this gold rush back to a regular lane. In other words, we still need a lot of human intervention just yet. Everything is not flawless, and you got to think about it. AI is only as good as the information that we humans feed it. So you can never rely 1,000% on AI. Oh, you like that? It rhymes. Never rely on AI. That brings us to the end of our news for this hour. I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in, keeping up with the world with us, and spending your Saturday afternoon here. Keep those families of those affected in your thoughts, of course, across this country that are going through different things. Stay safe out there. And if you're in those Midwestern storm zone, and as always, this one was for my Gramps, who is from Arkansas. You guys stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.